Today we'll be discussing the late great comedians Louie Anderson and Bob Saget, and we'll be discussing scleroderma. This is Doctor vs. Comedian. I'm Dr. Asif Doja, and this is the Doctor of Laughs.
Not a real doctor.
Ali Hassan. Every episode I pick a topic for Ali from comedy to entertainment, and I question him about it. Then Ali picks a topic from medicine and health and grills me on that topic. Today we will go over the careers of Louie Anderson and Bob Saget, who both passed away recently. And we'll be discussing the disease scleroderma. But before that, Ali, how is it going?
A little achy. A lot of snow shoveling happening lately in our neck of the woods. Your neck of the woods as well.
Yeah, lots of snow. So you've been doing the shoveling a lot?
We're doing the shoveling. It was, I don't know if you remember snowstorm of the century in the, back in the 90s, late 90s. It was reminiscent of one of those. That was a snowstorm where shoveled the drive. So I lived in a basement apartment and I got $50 a month. Classy. I got $50 a month knocked off of my rent if I lawn mow and shovel. I was like, oh, that's a bargain. It barely snows in Toronto. Incorrect. Right. I got snowstorm of the century. So I would shovel that driveway. Then I went to my friend Himesh's. We shoveled his driveway. Then we came back to my house, and it had filled up another 2 feet again. We had to. It was madness. I remember we drove around. Not only did they have to say don't drive, people were like, "Well, of course don't drive, right?" But we were. I was from Quebec. I was like, I've seen snow. I have winter tires, so we went driving, and we were like. Helping push people out of ditches and stuff like that. And it was, I don't know, it felt like a post-apocalyptic vibe. Mm-hmm. It also felt interesting to push somebody out of a ditch. Like they're stuck there. They're completely stuck. They're helpless. Himesh and I used all the power we have to make sure our feet don't slip. We push them out. And then no thank you, not even a wave. That's always...
they just drive off.
That's a memory I have from the snowstorm.
Well, that's the most Toronto thing to ever have Torontoed that I've ever heard. I mean, for those of you who haven't, either
had the pleasure
of visiting Toronto, don't expect people to hold doors open for you. That is like not happening. And it's all pre-COVID. Maybe with COVID, people are more hesitant. I don't know about touching doors or whatever, or door handles, but nobody holds doors open for you. Nobody says thank you if you hold the door open for them. And, people making eye contact, that's a big no-no in Toronto, I guess. Great.
Poor Asif. Look at these dated concepts that you still believe in, like decency and civility.
Yeah, I'm a bit harsh on Toronto. I lived there for 5 years, and you live there currently. But it's just friendliness isn't not that big of a deal.
Let me ask you this. I've got a little bit of a toothache, as I've told you about. This morning, my wife was going by this like French bakery, and I was like, maybe if you could pick up some croissants, because until I get to the dentist, can't chew on anything too significant. So croissant, I thought, it's very
soft,
and it soothes my heart as well.
Soothes your heart. It clogs the arteries going to your
but
heart
it's comfort food.
Butter,
it makes me feel good. But yeah, of course it's not healthy. But I order it online so that it'll be ready for her and put in all the info. They ask for a phone number. I don't put in my phone number. I put in a fake phone number, just like a, area code and then 974s,
Okay. Paranoid, I guess. Sure.
Well, every time I give a number anywhere within that week, I'm getting spam text messages for like Celine Dion tickets or some other thing.
It's not that bad, actually.
It's not the end of the world, but I just, your phone rings and you go to it and you're like, ugh.
Okay.
I know you're
some people have that so they can confirm your order if there's a problem. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but what was the problem going to be? I thought.
Okay, well, keep going. I won't interrupt.
Anyway, turns out one of the items, so we had croissants,
is missing.
Croissants,
that's the problem that can occur sometimes.
So that was missing, and then they just canceled the whole order. Because they couldn't reach me. They canceled the whole order. And somehow I thought of you immediately. I was like, what
I already predicted it. I didn't know that story, but I predicted the folly of you not giving the right phone number. It caused, you created your own downfall there.
I did, eh?
Very, very bad. Very bad.
I mean, they had my email. That's how they reached
Come
out to
on,
me.
email. Emails if you want a response in a week.
Yeah, I guess. Anyway, so by the time my wife got there, rectified all that, all the croissants were gone.
Oh,
And it
no.
would be another
So you had to
hour
have like
get
a
croissant.
baguette or something really hard?
I had
What
to
was
have,
it?
yeah. I had a bite of an almond croissant, which I did not care for, and then a very crusty baguette. You got it.
Yeah.
And it didn't.
And
Yeah,
the tooth was worse.
My tooth was
I
worse.
tell you. This is a parable, everyone. This is a parable that hopefully you all learn from. Okay, Ollie, a bit of a sad few weeks. We've had two deaths of two really giants of comedy in Louie Anderson and Bob Saget. So I thought we would talk about this. I want to ask you a bit about, what you know about these guys, how they've influenced comedy. And I don't know if you want to do what we did before with Betty White, where we each kind of talked about a couple, one or two interesting points about these guys that we didn't already know, because there's been a lot of talk about these guys in the news over the past couple of weeks. So I thought maybe we'd see if there was something that in these articles that we've come across that was kind of a unique sort of thing. So you want to start with Louie Anderson?
Yeah, well, Louie, one thing, if people don't know Louie Anderson, I would say very, very much worth exploring two parts of his life. Number one, his stand-up comedy. It was really like, he was a big guy. He was overweight, but he didn't, he had this one classic joke where he would, show up. It's the first time I ever heard that joke, and it turned hack, but I think it was his joke where he would stand in front of the mic stand when he got on stage and then go, "Oh, let me move the mic stand out of the way so you can see me better."
Right.
Even though, he's 300 plus pounds, we could see him just fine. But in general, he didn't make a ton of, I don't know, you felt like you were laughing with him and never at him. It was a very, very interesting style he had where, I don't know, it was like we were all in it together. We were all laughing. He made everybody feel like we were all suffering from stuff, and let's all laugh at our problems. And it was a beautiful thing. He didn't take down other people. He didn't even take down himself too bad, where you're like, oh, that's sad. He was, and to that point, I think that's why he was a Family Feud host for 3 or 4 seasons. Do you remember that? Do you remember that?
I didn't remember it till you said that. Then I remembered he was the host. A Family Feud host has to be a bit kind of acerbic and a bit harsh. I think Steve Harvey does a good job currently in the States. Jerry D does it in Canada. I don't know if it was the best fit for Louie Anderson.
I think he was too sweet and loving. I think that's why he didn't. I don't know. I don't know why he didn't continue, but I think he's just such a sweet guy. But you want somebody who was going to make you feel at ease on that show. He was absolutely the guy.
That's
and in
true.
the moment, he could be extremely funny and very, very charming. But I see what you're saying. The other hosts, he lacked something the other people had for better or worse in that sharp, biting style.
Yeah, Richard Dawson is a whole other category of hosts. He's the OG for Family Feud for me. Yeah, but he was a different thing. He wasn't really.
He's also the OG
back.
for sexual molesters, right? He also had something
that
the others didn't.
Yeah, it's true. That's quite creepy now that I think about it. But But anyway, getting back to Louie Anderson. Louie Anderson. When was the first time you kind of were exposed to him?
I think it was comedy specials, it would have been maybe the Just for Laughs stuff on television, or maybe when I was visiting my cousin in the U.S., these HBO comedy specials, or I just want to say that it's actually phenomenal. If you look at the tributes that are pouring in about Louie, it's from all walks of life, all different backgrounds. Dane Cook, I'm just looking here from the Hollywood Reporter, Dane Cook, Bill Burr, masterful people who I consider masters of their craft refer to Louie Anderson as a master. You have then Michaela Watkins, Wesley Snipes, Haley Joel Osment, Byron Allen, Kathy Griffin. There's so many people from so many different industries all talk about the pleasure of either knowing him or meeting him or what he did for them. And it's really, really touching. And I don't know. I think the reason I wanted to talk about Louie and Bob this week is that it's like these two real, like, sweet, kind of gentle giants who went. And I probably, as you asked me where I saw Louie, it was probably as I think about it, it would have been either Carson or Letterman.
Yeah,
That's
I think
where
so
would
too.
have seen
I think
it.
so too. I mean, he was also on Hollywood Squares a lot back in the day, so I saw him a lot on TV,
Mm-hmm.
and I definitely saw him in Coming to America, but I think I saw him prior to that movie as well. But I think I saw him before Coming to America as well, as you said, on specials. Like I said, he was kind of like on daytime, nighttime. He was on a lot of TV back in the day, but I loved him in Coming to America as one of the other McDowell employees.
Yeah, that was his big break as well. So you were asking about things people may not know about Louie Anderson. I will say that for me, one of the things that I found interesting about him was his connection to his mother. And I don't know if everybody knows that, but there's this great interview he did with Conan where he talks about how much he loved his mother. And he's one of 11 children, big Midwestern family, and he's the second youngest. And it sounds like he had a kind of a tough childhood with his dad, but it's a beautiful interview where he still, this is what I'm talking about. Everyone still has their humanity, even though he wouldn't let you feel too angry about his dad.
Mm-hmm.
He immediately said his dad was still a wonderful guy in his own ways and this kind of stuff. And I really like that. But if you haven't watched Baskets, it's really like, I love this story. Zach Galifianakis, when they were talking about casting for his mom on this show, Baskets, the character of Christine Baskets, his mother, he was like, somebody like a female version of Louie Anderson. I guess he was telling some producer or co-writer. And then he goes, you know what? Screw it. Let's just ask Louie if Louie will do it. And the partner, whoever that writing partner was like, what are you talking about? Louie's never going to do that. He's like, well, let's ask. It doesn't hurt to ask. And we're so lucky that Zach Galifianakis thought to do that. And we're lucky that Louie said yes. Did you watch Baskets?
I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it? Dude, it's like, there's many articles have been written about this where this character transcended drag. It wasn't Louie Anderson in a dress.
Yeah, I've heard
it was
that.
Louie doing an ode to his mother. It was Louie doing like just that same humility that he approached comedy with and life with. You see all these tributes about what a kind heart, this kindness and tenderness of somebody who's, flawed or broken. I shouldn't say flawed. I should say broken. Her, I'm not giving anything away. Her husband is said to have committed suicide in the show, and she'd never be able to do the things she was, and obviously an overweight woman and all that. It's played with such utter humanity, and it's the most beautiful thing about that show. It's a great show, but really, Louie Anderson's performance on that show. There's one episode where, she is uncomfortable to join, I think, the swimming class. She doesn't want to, be in a bathing suit around other women, and she goes to this beach at night and walks into the water in this big red swimming suit, and just as soon as she gets in the water, it's like in the Pacific Ocean, she just lets out this breath of freedom. And I don't know, man, it was played masterfully, and people were calling that Louie's second act. Louie got a second turn at doing something great on television after all these years.
Well, he actually was nominated for the Emmy Award 3 times and won in 2016.
Yeah.
Again, I forgot about till recently, and when I was reading about his passing. Speaking of being cast in things, and he was cast in Coming to America. So Eddie Murphy, I don't know if you knew this, requested this because the producer said, well, we should have one white person. It's really a African-American cast. So he said, I want Louie Anderson, who was his friend, another comedian, because he's the funniest white guy around. That was Eddie Murphy, vouching for him. And I agree, it was hilarious. But did you know that he was also, this is a show you and I used to watch when we were kids, Perfect Strangers, with Bronson Pinchot as Balky Bartokopoulos, right? And in the pilot,
we did the Dance of Joy together.
We did the Dance of Joy. Yeah. In the pilot, it was Louie Anderson who was cast as Mark Lynn Baker's role. And then when it was picked up, they changed him they changed to Mark Lynn Baker.
Cousin Laddie, yeah.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? They changed the...
Yeah, that is, I don't see, I mean, it was a great choice, obviously. That show left an impact and lasted for a number of seasons. I don't know. I don't see Louie doing that. But then I also didn't see Louie playing Zach Galifianakis' mother. So what do I know? How do
Yeah, I wonder if Louis would have been too nice for that. Again, like we indicated before with the Family Feud, like Larry had to have this kind of, again, acerbic, to use that word, contrast to Balky, who was so kind of innocent and bright and,
Sure.
So I'm not sure if that would have worked. But yeah, so in terms of casting, that was those are two big things I found out recently.
That's interesting. Another thing about Louis that I did not know that a lot of people seem to. I mean, I didn't get Fox in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what Fox was except for a company that made movies. Before Family Feud, so 94 to 98, he had a Saturday morning cartoon. It was semi-autobiographical. It was his life, and it was called Life with Louie.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this kid series, Saturday morning cartoon. I did not know that. You were a cartoon fiend yourself, Asif. Did you ever come across that show?
I knew about it. I can't remember if I watched it, maybe one episode, but I definitely knew it existed back in the day for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the last thing that we'll just talk about is something interesting. It's a bit more of a downer, but I had no idea about this till I was doing some reading after he passed away. So in 1997 around, there was this guy named Richard John Gordon who blackmailed Louie Anderson. Yeah, this guy's a total lowlife. He tried to blackmail, actually he did blackmail Louie Anderson because he said that Louie Anderson propositioned him at a casino in 1993. And so basically between 97 and 98, Louie Anderson paid this guy about $100,000 in hush money to kind of keep this under wraps, and then the guy was trying to increase the amount that he was blackmailing him for, and then I think eventually Louie Anderson went to the FBI, and this guy was like arrested after some crazy high-speed chase in LA, and I don't know, it's just a crazy story.
It's crazy. I did not know about that at all until I did a deep dive after he had, and that story is more like a sad comment on Hollywood because, he wanted it. In my mind, I'm like, who cares if people thought he was gay? That's my first thought. But, he was doing these family shows and he was worried. And, he's probably right in the 90s in Hollywood because his kids show, Life with Louie, came out.
Yeah, it was
after,
around that time. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. Again, that would totally nobody would even like bat an eye really nowadays with that type of thing. But that's too bad. But I'm glad that was again settled like 20 years ago. But for Louie Anderson, yeah, definitely a great person and really respected by a lot of other comics. And it's a real sad occasion on his passing.
The other person who, Louie's joining up at the, blackjack table in the sky, one likes to imagine.
I think they'd be at the comedy cellar or something like that in the sky.
They'd be at the comedy cellar. The cellar suggests they're in hell together, but
no, but that's the name of anyway.
I get it, but cellar, underground, below ground. Okay, you get it? Yeah. Walk down the stairs. Bob Saget is, one of the most interesting things. I don't know if you remember this, Asif, but this is like, I don't think this is pre-internet. The internet was available, but I guess we didn't scour the internet the way we used to. Mm-hmm. But I remember everybody for like this 2-year period, their favorite little tidbit to tell you was, hey, Bob Saget, he's really dirty.
Yeah, his comedy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was that was the time of Full House, and everybody would whisper it to each other.
Well, no, Full House and America's Got Talent. Got home videos every Sunday night. His smiling, boyish, flawless face, and he's getting off on these like harmless pranks that are happening and trips and falls. And he used to be, what was his name? Danny Tanner. Mm-hmm. I was going to say Uncle Jesse.
Yeah, boy.
He was Danny, and it was inconceivable. That's why everybody loved to tell you he's actually very dirty, because once you found that out, your mind was actually blown. Now, that's going back over 20, 25 years, but I remember that was a big, big deal. His life is pretty interesting. Bob Saget, actor and TV host and comedian, originally wanted to do what with his life, Asif? Any guesses?
He wanted to be a doctor.
He wanted to be just like Asif.
Yeah, exactly.
Doja.
We're the same.
Correct.
We're the same base.
Yeah. So you see, that's why there's you don't have to do what you think you want to do.
No,
people.
that's
Bob
why
Saget.
there's a doctor and comedian in the name of this title, because you could do one or the other. You have two choices. That's about
Can't
it.
be both.
So, but yeah, he didn't do that. I think it was one of his teachers who said, you should maybe look into film or creative writing or something like that.
Yeah. She just urged him. She was an English teacher. She was an honors English teacher. So I don't know if he was doing presentations in class or whatever it was, but that's a big deal. She didn't say you should write a book. She's an English teacher. She didn't, she said, go into film. So she saw something in him and he trusted her words and did that. And he says that he was overweight, which you can't really picture when you think of Bob Saget from those days. He's very overweight, very cocky. And then he had a gangrenous appendix taken out. He almost died. And then he got over being cocky and overweight, and he became the nice guy he was known for being. And we were talking about Louie Anderson, the tributes. Bob Saget too. I mean, I think Louie sadly was battling cancer. There might have been some expectation that this could happen, but I think with Bob Saget, what was the cause of death there?
Yeah, I'm not sure they know. All I've been reading is that they don't think there was foul play or suicide, and they don't think it was drug related. So I don't know. We'll find out soon. Maybe in the next couple of weeks. It might be out now by the time this podcast comes out. But,
yeah,
I think it was natural causes. I think.
Yeah, and if that's what it was, and his ticker just went in his sleep, personally, I take some comfort in that kind of thing. He was on the road. He was performing. He wasn't at Motel 6. He was staying at the Ritz. He was doing shows. He was doing what he loved. Apparently, anybody you talked to knew that you could sit with, just like Norm Macdonald. Before him, you could sit with Bob Saget for hours and talk about stand-up. He was a real student of the craft. Him and Norm were also great friends.
Yeah, he directed Dirty Work, which Norm Macdonald was in. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. A hilariously awful and awfully hilarious movie. Really, it rides that line. I don't know. I feel like it's a good life lived. I think people feel a little sad because he recently got remarried, and he and his new wife were looking forward to a lot of time. When I say recently, I think it was a few years ago. But yeah, I think he felt like he had a lot of life left, and people did. But hey, if you're gonna go, it's a good way to go. And also, you look at some of the tributes of Bob, and you listen to people talking about him, whether it's the Conan O'Briens or whoever there's various people who he's worked with or come in contact with. It's overwhelmingly positive. I haven't seen anything negative.
No,
to
not
be
at
honest.
all.
I don't want to say exclusively, because I'm sure he might have shoved somebody out of his way once in anger, maybe. But I don't know. It's like these are people. The sad part for me is that like the good people are gone. People who like spread a lot of joy. And if anyone wants to listen to an interview with Bob Saget and see what a sweetheart he is, you look up. My friend Trent McClellan has a podcast called The Generators, and he interviews people kind of, at the top of their game in comedy and in the sports world and in various arenas. And he met Bob just on the road. He's a Canadian comedian, and he was, I guess, at some club where he met Bob and he opened for him, and they had a nice connection. I don't know. I think it's been beautiful. I think it's been beautiful to see people like Ronnie Chang also saying that once they met, Bob would stay in touch and be, hey, I loved you in this movie, and this is great. Really proud of you. And he's just a wonderful guy. So yeah, The Generators with Trent McClellan. It's an extended, I think it's over an hour that they talk, Trent and Bob Saget. It's really nice. It's really sweet that, he wasn't that guy who'd be like, oh, who's this Canadian guy in his podcast? He was like, I'll make time for anybody I like. So that's I recommend The Generators, not just for Bob Saget's interview, but definitely for Bob Saget's interview.
It's really interesting because, as you said, he had the legacy of him on TV, which, as you said, Full House, America's Funniest Home Videos, and then he was on the newer Full House. So when he passed away a few weeks ago, I was telling my kids, Bob Saget died. They knew exactly who he was, not from the first two shows, but from Fuller House, because he was on a few episodes of that. And of course, my kids have gone back and watched Full House as well. So they definitely knew who he was. And then, of course, all of his comedy. And as you said, known for being like this dirty or blue comic, which a lot of people were surprised at initially. And of course, there's the famous, a couple of our friends texted us, The Aristocrats, which is this whole documentary about, what's supposed to be the dirtiest joke in comedy. And he's the and you have to watch the documentary to get it, but he was basically takes the cake in that one. And everybody says, no, he's the winner of the funniest telling of the Aristocrats joke. I actually agree with what you're saying. The amount of outpouring of love for this person, and it's because, what you give out into the world is what you get back, right? And I mean, he was such a nice person. That's what everybody says about him. All his coworkers, all his fellow comedians. Really, that's his legacy, I think, is how kind he was to people. How, we've talked about this before. When people who are above you are doing well, in comedy and entertainment, the people who reach down to help bring you up, right? That's what is a mark of a good human being. And it sounds like that's what he was completely. So really, that's an amazing legacy for him, definitely.
And he stays in touch also, apparently, with everybody from that show. I guess it's understandable that after 8-9 seasons, you'd become a family, but also you could be very sick of each other. I've read interviews with them where they say that doesn't happen in every show, but this one, they keep in touch all the time. So sounds like it was very difficult, obviously, for all of them. I'll just give you 2 pieces of trivia about things that I learned about him in terms of other shows. One of them I think you know. The second one you may not know. So, he was the narrator for which long-running television show? I didn't know this. This was my thing, too. This was
your thing. As well. We both have the same thing.
Very, very interesting. It wasn't a tidbit I'm sharing out of knowledge. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I watched at least 40 episodes of How I Met Your Mother over the years, and I never caught on that it was Bob Saget's voice.
I probably watched 1 episode total of that show. But I didn't know that he was the narrator. Okay, so you knew that. Okay, 2 other trivia things about 2 other TV shows. He was also a regular person on Entourage, and he played this crazy version of himself. Again, now that you know the real Bob Saget from all these kind words people say, he's not like this at all. The character in there was a total jerk, strung out on cocaine all the time and womanizing, and it totally unlike him. But he was on several episodes of that. And then my kids also know him from being on this other TV show. Do you know what show recently? Last year, I think. It was The Masked Singer. No. He was one of the singers on The Masked Singer. He was Squiggly Monster on the Masked Singer. So that was so again, he connected with a lot of people over many generations. And actually, there is one more piece of trivia, but why don't we save that for the next section?
We are talking about scleroderma today, and the reason we're doing that, Asif, and if you look up enough Bob Saget articles, you'll see this come up very, very quickly. It was a disease, the cure for which he was definitely trying his best to find, with financial donations and awareness and all this kind of stuff. And it is because his sister, Gay Saget, passed away from scleroderma many, many years ago. And I didn't think, somehow I didn't think that an autoimmune disease could result in somebody's death too. So that's why I wanted to have you, in Bob's honor, kind of continue to spread some awareness about what scleroderma is.
Yeah, and definitely. And he was actually, I think, on the board of directors of the Scleroderma Research Foundation in the U.S. and raised a lot of money for them. And in fact, we'll give you these links, and we'll just mention it now. The Scleroderma Research Foundation in the U.S. and Scleroderma Canada, a lot of them are matching donations and things like that if you're donating his honor. So check out those websites. We'll link to those. But he was very involved with, as you said, raising money for this disease. disease. He raised over $26 million for the Scleroderma Research Foundation over the years, and he invited his comedian friends who always said yes. John Stamos, not really a comedian, but you know what I mean, his friend John Stamos, George Lopez, Ray Romano, Chappelle, Robin Williams, even John Mayer, who's a very good friend of his. I don't know if you guys have seen the video of John Mayer picking up his car at the airport. Yeah. Have you seen that video?
Yeah, I have.
On social media. Very, very sweet and like really, really nice. Him and Jeff Ross kind of just did this favor for Bob's wife, because his Bob Saget's car was stuck at the airport. His wife is dealing with a million things, so they went and did that and talked about that. So anyway, if you want to contribute just like these other guys have, you should definitely look into it. But let's talk a bit about this disease. So scleroderma derives from the Greek words scleros, which is hard or indurated, and derma, which is skin, right? So
more, which again led me to the confusion about how is a skin disease resulting.
So the way to think about it is scleroderma is the skin manifestation of a bigger disease, which we call systemic sclerosis. So now, you know, when I learned about it in medical school, we just kind of called it scleroderma, but the rheumatologists, who are they're the joint connective tissue doctors and a lot of autoimmune disease, they have now moved over the past 20 years or so to call it systemic sclerosis, to really highlight that it doesn't just affect the skin, it can affect lots of different areas. And it was first actually described, the thickened skin, by Hippocrates, right? So the ancient Greek father of medicine. And in 1836, there was this Italian physician called Fantinetti, and he used the term scleroderma generale at the time to describe the skin of somebody who had this tightening of their skin and then this loss of joint motion. And then the idea of it being a systemic disease was introduced kind of in the 1940s by this guy named Robert Getz. So that's kind of the progression of how scleroderma was named and identified over, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years.
What does it look like on somebody's body? And what does it look like? How would you recognize it on someone or on yourself?
So there's different areas that can be involved, right? So when you have the skin findings, which is one of the main manifestations, if you get this progressive tightness. So what happens is your skin actually swells and has puffiness initially, and then it kind of that swelling goes down and almost indurates. You almost have like an indentation kind of in your skin, and this skin tightness. So it looks like the skin is very taut over people's face. Often it looks shiny. Usually it affects the fingers first and then goes proximally. And then later on, it's in other areas. But face is also pretty early. You can get different kinds of pigmentation abnormalities as well. You can have a lot of itchiness, like very diffuse itchiness. You can get what are called telangiectasias, which are these blood vessels on your skin that are very prominent. And that can sometimes be a way to diagnose it. And the other thing that people get in their skin, well, they can get ulcers on their skin, which they call digital pits, but they're actually just mini ulcers. It's not just a problem with your skin, and they get what's called collagen deposition in various areas. But it's not just the skin; it's actually the blood vessels. And when you think about it as an abnormality of blood vessels and a blood vessel disease, that explains not only some of the skin findings, but why you also get other areas of the body involved. So because of the ulcers are actually a problem with the micro kind of blood vessels in your fingers, and you get insufficiency there, and like, you know, an ulcer, just like in this case, just like death or necrosis, many areas there. The other thing they get is Raynaud's phenomenon. Have you heard of Raynaud's phenomenon? No. I know that you have connective tissue in your families, connective tissue diseases, I should say. So
rheumatoid arthritis,
right? Which is rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, scleroderma. These are all connective tissue diseases or autoimmune diseases. Raynaud's, you get this color change in your hands, where in this order, your hands or your fingers usually, especially with exposure to the cold, become white, like white, then blue, then red. And usually there's accompanying numbness or tingling and especially pain with that. Raynaud's phenomenon can be seen in many different types of connective tissue disease and sometimes just on its own, but it is very, very prominent in patients with scleroderma. So those are mainly kind of the skin sort of issues that you can see with scleroderma.
And then tell me who gets it, who's at risk of it. Is there stuff, that if you do too much of something, you could risk getting this, or is it hereditary?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's pretty rare. The incidence, so how many new cases you see a year, is about 20 cases per million in the United States. So it's not very common, but they have noticed an increase rate over time, again, for reasons that are unclear. It occurs most often in women as opposed to men. A lot of connective tissue diseases and autoimmune diseases occur more often in women. Again, we don't know exactly why. Usually it's in patients 30 to 50 years, but it can occur at any age group. I've seen it in kids before as well. So it can occur in any age group, but usually middle-aged women would be the most common age group that we'd see it in.
What is the prognosis once you know you have it? Is it degenerative?
Well, it can be treated over time. There are different medications that you can use. It unfortunately has the highest mortality rate out of all connective tissue diseases. And that's because remember, the scleroderma is just one aspect of it, but the bigger term is systemic sclerosis. So systemic means it can affect your whole body. And because of that, you can have these serious complications, which can result in death and sometimes.
Sure. Yeah, I think you're painting a picture for what Bob Saget sort of and his family would have had to endure just watching what his sister Gay would have gone through, right? It must be pretty painful.
And I think one of the reasons that Bob Saget was so committed to this cause is because it took his sister years to get diagnosed. And then sounds like she passed away relatively quickly after the diagnosis. So he's like, why did she see so many specialists? And again, you can read about his journey. We'll link to a couple articles about it. She was thought to have, fibromyalgia. She was thought to be psychogenic or functional, as we've talked about before on this podcast, right? It's all psychologic and things like that. But then you see it can happen in different organ systems. So sometimes physicians can't put it all together, especially if they don't notice the skin things. And so you can have stomach issues. You could have reflux, gastroesophageal reflux disease. You could have constipation. You can have obstruction in your intestines or diarrhea. Okay. This is all because of the blood vessels. They can cause severe respiratory problems and difficulty breathing. It can affect your heart and cause heart failure. It can cause renal disease. And sometimes that renal disease, so that's kidney disease, that could be life-threatening or fatal as well. Again, everything in your body is supplied by blood vessels. So it's always theoretically can cause a problem with this. The other issue that it can cause is with your muscles and joints. So you can get joint pain, muscle pain, joint limitation. You can even get what are called tendon friction rubs, which are almost exclusively seen in the systemic sclerosis. So you take someone's tendon and you move it. Either they move their hand and you could hear a noise and feel it under your fingers when they're moving this tendon. And these friction rubs, I don't know how to check for those. I've never felt one before, but my rheumatology colleagues who are the experts in this can detect these.
Okay. Yeah, I get the feeling of why it actually might have taken so long, depending on what she is going through. She might have been seeing, heart specialists and lung specialists, and you said there's these gastro issues as well. She might have been seeing internal medicine specialists. So it's really about a rheumatologist, I guess. Right?
Yeah, and so you could see all these, again, we sometimes compartmentalize things too much in medicine. So if you just see the GI person, they might not think about the other systems. Yeah. And if you just see the respirologist, they might not think of the other symptoms. Or a neurologist, not that it has too many neurologic symptoms, though it can, because again, there's small blood vessels in the brain as well. But the rheumatologists, they're not just joints, right? They are able to look at all different aspects of it. So, seeing a good rheumatologist to figure this out is sometimes what's necessary.
And how does a rheumatologist diagnose this?
Mainly with the clinical symptoms. They have kind of checklists and guidelines to look at the criteria that you would kind of fulfill to have a diagnosis of scleroderma or systemic sclerosis. There are some antibodies you can check because the three main problems that your body has when you have a scleroderma or systemic sclerosis, we said we had abnormal collagen deposition in various areas like the skin. You have a problem with the microscopic blood vessels, but you also have a problem with your immune system. And they can check for that looking at various antibodies. They're not always seen in everybody. So again, it's still what we call a clinical diagnosis. There's no one blood test you can do, but they can also do what's called a nail fold microscopy, where they look at kind of your nails with a microscope, and you can assess for kind of microvascular alterations. And that can also give people a suggestion that's what's going on. So the rheumatologists will often do that as well.
Okay. So that's how it's diagnosed. How's it treated?
So it's tough. Usually it's with immune suppressive medication. So the common ones we use is corticosteroids, which we've talked about in the past on other episodes, which decrease inflammation. But sometimes you have to go for stronger immune suppressives. Something like cyclophosphamide is one of the older medicines we use, but has a lot of side effects. And there's newer medications as well, what we call biologic agents, which have also been studied that can be used. But sometimes you just have to go based on the symptom. So for this symptom, what would you use? For another symptom, what would you use? So I'll give you the example of the Raynaud's phenomenon, that change in the color of your skin, white to blue to red, and which can also be painful. So you can use some medicines for that. You can use a calcium channel blocker, but you can also use a phosphodiesterase inhibitor. Are you sure you've never heard of sildenafil?
I'm quite sure.
Do you ever watch the Sunday morning news programs on CNN, NBC, ABC, or CBS?
I mean, it's maybe happened by accident.
So anyway, there's another name for sildenafil, which is Viagra.
Oh, you're kidding.
I haven't heard of that either, right? So I don't know. Do you know how Viagra works?
I mean, I know what it does, exactly how it works in the body. I haven't taken the time to research that.
Very, again, we don't have to do a whole episode on this, but basically it's a vasodilator. So it dilates blood vessels to allow then for erectile dysfunction, more flow to the penis to help with erectile dysfunction. But it can dilate any blood vessel, right? So again, the Raynaud's phenomenon, you're having this abnormal constriction of your blood vessels. So sometimes that works. Sometimes they have to use a modified form, but
Asif, thank you for doing your part, doctor, for bringing some awareness to scleroderma. We felt like, in light of Bob Saget's passing, it was the least we can do here.
Yeah, and as I said before, check out some of the research websites, the Scleroderma Research Foundation in the U.S., scleroderma.ca in Canada. And like I said, if you want to do something to commemorate Bob Saget, a donation to either of these organizations would be extremely helpful and something that we know he would have appreciated because he donated so much of his life towards this.
Thank you for listening today, Asif. Do you want to tell people that you're their doctor?
Sure. Before that, just remember to reach out to us, Dr. V Comedian, Twitter, Instagram, we're everywhere, Facebook, we're on YouTube, and send us an email, drvcomedian@gmail.com. Let us know what you think, any ideas. We got a good email the other day, Ali, because remember, I've been asking people to rate us on Spotify. That's a new thing. And one of our listeners reached out to us, Tina, and she said, I did try and do that, but you have to actually be listening on your Spotify account for that. So she's like, so I'll just switch over to Spotify for the next little while and rate you on that.
Thanks,
which is
Tina.
So nice. What a nice person. So she pointed that out to us, which was greatly appreciated. But please do rate and review and just tell a friend about the podcast. We'd really appreciate that. And remember that although I'm a doctor, I'm not your doctor. Medical issues we talk about are for your interest and information only, and they're not medical advice. Please consult your medical professionals for actual medical advice. Thanks for listening.
Bye.